Thank you very much, Prakash. And thank you to the commentators. So we're going to switch to the last two commentators now. In terms of my own quick reaction to what's gone on so far, yes, this is indeed another path-breaking paper on the part of these authors, and the combination of sort of innovative data work and understanding of institutional arrangements is quite powerful. In terms of the data side, Joe brought up the subject of heterogeneity. That's absolutely key. It's not just do they behave differently, but are measurement issues different between the larger and smaller issues? That is, some of the issues about multiple unit ownerships, perhaps some issues about incentives for underreporting that was mentioned in the paper. Are those do those vary? On the demand side, for a while now, I've been a housing finance guy, and the question is, what are the differences between borrowers across city tiers? We know that you need a 30% down payment in principle, but there's a lot of concern about shadow banking. That debt ratios are quite a bit higher. And I think that has implications for the outcome here, as well as the implications for lenders, for the regional banks, particularly smaller regional banks. What exposures do the larger banks have for them? How would the government deal differently with distress across these tiers are all important in terms of trying to figure out what the implication of further price declines would be. There was the big section on infrastructure, and for this, we're going to turn over to the next commentator, Xinrui from the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. They do a lot of work in this area, including in China, and so look forward to her comments. Go ahead, Xinrui.
Thank you so much, Richard. So yeah, just echoing a lot of, I guess our first great papers that shed light on tier 3 cities and a lot of important data, which is very difficult and impressive given the obvious difficulties to access important data and do such research in China. So my comments first just kind of follow up on the heterogeneity theme that I think one thing when we talk about tier 3 cities, what are we talking about? Because I think the definition used in this paper is residual, and then I mentioned that tier 3 cities basically in this definition also include what we normally consider include tier 3, 4, 5 in the Chinese context. And I think going forward, it may be useful to also just kind of differentiate that, because I think when we talk about tier 3, oftentimes we're talking about cities that still have population over 1 million. And the other thing is the location and the geospatial pattern of these tier 3, 4, 5 cities is also very important, because that will give you a more granular or more accurate picture on what's going on a local level. And then I think the second point is also kind of briefly comment on the demand problem or the housing affordability issues in T3. I think the paper did shows a lot of data on on the household level information, but I think going forward, it will be interesting to know who's buying the properties, who are the homeowners, and to kind of have a more understanding of the demographics, because this will, I think, just kind of citing a different paper that's kind of done by Lincoln Institute, they use the different methodologies on the survey, and then they showed that, well, I think, and also echoing the finding of this paper, that the house price to income ratio is around 5, and then that means that despite of this decline to demand in these tier 3 cities, housing affordability could still be an issue, and that should also be kind of taken into perspective. I think just comment on the regional allocation, the mismatch or imbalance of infrastructure projects. The author correctly observed that the regional allocation of infrastructure projects is highly correlated with the real estate construction. I think the explanation given by the author is that there is this fundamental issue that this sector of infrastructure development or constructions have been racing ahead for decades, and also there's this local government incentives, this quote unquote like breakneck competition for various projects. I like to highlight though that I think the authors kind of put high-speed rail, switch, road construction all together, but I think the rationale or the model or the decisions in terms of why and how to allocate high-speed rail, switch, and road constructions are different. Because high-speed rail is more kind of a national, I don't know, a lot of the decision making are pretty much at a national level, versus new road construction and switch are kind of more directly related to the municipal level land finance, where cities supply land, service land, and they're mostly responsible for the investment and maintenance of this kind of infrastructure. So that I think that just to draw that, I think that is a difference that need to be noted. So I guess the next step, just a brief comment on the housing policy, because I think based on this paper, the projection or the overall scenario of tier three cities is pretty bleak. And just quoting the previous commentator, China is likely to be a massive and persistent price decline. I think so basically city economies, and then the paper has correctly drawn that the city economy and public finance also disproportionately relied on the real estate and construction sector, which is already slowing and shrinking, and then these sectors also employ most of the workforce, and the volatility of price or profitability of the sector would likely leads to the problems of unemployment and later reduced income of the homeowners who owns these properties. And this really kind of, I think, the next question, whether a home ownership level default could become more likely, because previously there's a lot of literature saying that the savings rates are very high in Chinese households, so they're not likely to default on home loans. But maybe that assumption would be readjusted, or maybe we need to investigate a little bit more to find evidence to figure out what's the picture now. I think one way is to kind of measure to actually figure out the delinquency rate of home loan, and then maybe one methodology is to start looking at online auctions of homes, because China, starting 2014, has had established a judicial online auction system similar to the judicial court sales of default homes, like similar to judicial foreclosure in America. So I think that could be, but I don't see many literature on there, but maybe that could be a place to start to figure out, start to see, find out the risk of default. Yeah, I guess again, kind of circling back to the policy. So I think first, existing housing policy starts to show diminishing effects. So that's my impression, shared by many people, and I'm glad that the author will continue to do more research and to validate or investigate that. So a quick review of this year's housing policy at the city level shows that the policy tools that the tier 3 cities can use are still pretty limited. And they're mostly, the policies mostly include local direct subsidies, relaxing the purchase eligibilities, lowering down payment requirement, and also and sometimes even the cities will impose price restrictions that prevent real estate developers or sellers to give discounts on home price. Despite the national policy mandate on affordability, I think the biggest problem just pointed out by Alexandro earlier, that a lot of the structural reforms are really needed. Maybe it's moment to consider those, including the hukou, property tax, property rights, because there's also this small property rights housing. That's, I don't know, that's you normally present, some people estimate it's about 8% of total urban housing stocks, but that's another issue, as well as the structural reforms needed on land finance or public finance. And these structural reforms has proven politically difficult, even though necessary. So maybe the revising of the trend or the people's assumptions about the housing market will open some opportunities for reform. And then lastly, I think there's a lot of
Xinrui, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it just we're down to the last couple of minutes here. So
sorry. I guess the lastly is just a lot of lessons can be learned and shared on an international level, such as the U.S. Post-industrial cities that has experienced a lot of similar issues. Yeah.
Oh, okay.